when you're in a situation where you've even got Peter Mandelson and Tony Blair saying that rejoining the single market isn't the solution for 2022, I think there are people who still want that, and I understand where they're coming from, but really that is not the position that the Labour Party is going to be taking going into the next election.
Labour has a 5-step plan to make Brexit work. Jenny Chapman, Baroness Chapman, is Shadow Cabinet Office Minister and can talk to us now about that. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Is there a danger that these 5-step plans boil down to Labour saying they'd be magically better at negotiating with the EU? We're better at getting a deal out of the EU than those wretched Tories did.
Well, it would be hard to be worse than the wretched Tories, I think, on this particular issue. What we're saying, though, is that you're not going to make any progress with growing the economy until you get these issues in a better place. The first thing you need to do is to get the issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol resolved. We accept that there are problems with checks that need to be fixed. The government's going about it in completely the wrong way by acting unilaterally, and it's causing huge problems. The EU then, in turn, is, I think, not acting brilliantly either by saying you can't be part of the Horizon research programme until these issues are resolved. This is all fixable by taking an approach that's about the national interest rather than Boris Johnson's self-interest. And we just think this has gone on long enough. And that's what we're saying today.
But the Tories would say they're doing it in the national interest. And your plan, talking about new security arrangements to defend our borders, Labour would eliminate most border checks, work with business to put in place a better scheme to allow low-risk goods to enter Northern Ireland. These are all the things that the Tory government want to achieve, and it's a question of whether you can negotiate to achieve them. There's not a magic wand you can wave that will make them happen.
No, there isn't a magic wand. This is about hard work, diligence, statecraft. The Labour Party spent a great deal of care negotiating the Good Friday Agreement. This lot can't even get a prawn sandwich across the Irish Sea. That's how bad it is. What we think's going on is that the Tories, because Boris Johnson is in a real difficult situation at the moment, they're using these issues to cause division and to shore him up within their own party. And we just think we deserve better than that as a nation. The problems that have come about as a result of Brexit are all resolvable, but you've got to take them in turn, and you've got to have pragmatic solutions that work, with your EU partners, but work with businesses here in the UK. And then you stop damaging your international reputation, because we're a country now that wants to do deals with the United States, for instance, and they've been very clear that they don't want to go about that with us while these issues in Northern Ireland are outstanding.
Would it be honest to many of your members to say the best thing to do here would just be to join the single market again? Because actually that solves the border problems, it solves the trade problems. The referendum didn't rule out staying in the single market. Indeed, some Brexiteers argued to stay in the single market even after we came out with the referendum. Is there any part of the Labour thinking that could include maybe the single market at some point?
There isn't, and I know that there are some people who would like that. They tell me that frequently, but the trouble is that there's been so much division over this issue, and that if the Labour Party were to say that we wanted to rejoin the single market, it would just reignite all of that division, and we don't think that is in the country's interests. And actually, you can resolve the issues that we now have without taking that route. And if you rejoin the single market, you end up with free movement of labour again. You end up in much of the same debates that we've just moved on from.
But freedom of movement of labour would mean that fruit gets picked in our country, that we have truck drivers again that can help us with the problem of the cost of living and dealing with inflation. There's an argument that the single market solves some economic problems.
But what people say they need in order to come here and do those jobs is certainty and a stable process, so that they know they can plan 6 months, a year ahead, that they're going to go and work in the UK and do those jobs. You don't need to have freedom of movement to do that. What you need is a sensible and stable seasonal worker visa in the case of the fruit pickers, and a sensible shortage occupation list where you have that ability. And actually, if you look at something like meat processing, we're seeing people now, or even before we left the EU, increasingly coming from further and further afield. So they were coming from Ukraine, not in the EU, and they were coming from Brazil in the case of meat processing. So, it's not, even if that were to be our position, we'd still find ourselves with some outstanding problems. And actually, when you're in a situation where you've even got Peter Mandelson and Tony Blair saying that rejoining the single market isn't the solution for 2022, I think there are people who still want that, and I understand where they're coming from, but really that is not the position that the Labour Party is going to be taking going into the next election.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. That's Jenny Chapman, Baroness Chapman, Shadow Cabinet Office Minister.